All right, team. So excited. So I stole this PowerPoint from Lauren, but the overall, so we're going to start with like our big goals, and then we'll go into like a focus area for today. Sorry, I think I'm stuck here. And then we'll jump into P3. My goal is to get through one whole P3, but we are going to use Friday's lesson to do like a quick drill practice of our focus area, and so that like part of the lesson will be practice. We won't do the whole P3 for Friday's lesson. Cool. So we know our overall goal is to say it, 1, 2, 3.
Be the state.
Be the state. And for us, what that means for our KMP goals is that we get an AI of 65 in ELA. We also, sorry?
What does that really mean?
An academic index. It's like the compilation of, it's the score that gives our school a grade. So Mark was talking about how we're an A school of growth. The way our AI works is our AI actually had us at a C, but our AI for growth, exactly. All right.
So that's like 65% proficient?
Not quite, because the way it's calculated is really complex. Each mastery basic, approaching basic gets assigned a point value. So like it's like 150, 100, 85, 65, and it's like average. Right, and then AB doesn't get anything anymore.
Okay.
So, and then it's averaged, and that's how you get your AI. So that's a really short and not totally accurate way to calculate an AI. I can show you sometime if you like. Email me. But what that means for us with our ORF goals is cutting the 10th percentile in half. Overall, 75% of our students are at or above the 25th percentile, and over 50% of our students are at or above the 50th percentile. So when we talk about Strong Start, we're in ELA, we're talking about the launch and read for just enjoy. If we're able to set this up effectively, that means that we're able to jump into the rest of our lessons with a really strong focus. If kids can monitor their comprehension and focus on their gist read, we know that they're set up for success in their deeper meaning reading. Currently, 70% of our students in 3rd and 4th grade across the region are meeting our goal for actively reading. We want to get to 80 and 90%. So our short-term goal for our classrooms right now is that 100% of our students actively read the text during that first read by the end of Strong Start. Now Mark has rolled out phase 2. Technically phase 2 doesn't start until next week. Strong Start is still actually going for another week and a half until our interim. We're rolling it out early because we got a wellness Wednesday, so.
Wait, so does that mean students are reading on their own for just enjoy?
Not necessarily.
Oh,
no,
okay.
What it does mean is that 100% of students are meeting our during reading criteria for success.
Oh, okay.
So it could be a read aloud, partner read, or independent read, but they're meeting that CFS. Okay. And we're looking pretty good. We are getting better and better. We're currently between 75 and 85% of students meeting that criteria for success across our classrooms. So today's objectives is that we, actually let's popcorn these out. Can we go this way? Thanks.
Build vision for focus part of block. Prepare for upcoming P3.
Practice delivering upcoming P3.
Excellent. I say prepare because we're going to do a quick little drill. Cool. So what that means is that we're going to do some vision building and analyze a model against our vision of excellence. We're going to look at our vision of excellence, which is here on our front page, and then we're going to go through our P3 together. So what I want us to start by doing is looking at the vision of excellence. I want you to put a check next to things that you are doing consistently or have focused on this week, and then think about what the impact was on kids. Let's take about a minute to do that. And then with your shoulder partner, or let's do shoulder partners. With your shoulder partner, what is something that you've done successfully this week, and what was the impact on kids?
I've been doing the read aloud, think punctuation, like as we're reading, think about our CFA, just like actually referring to it. We're sitting there and not even having to like read aloud.
want to do that deeper read. Something that I talked about with Allison French over at Central City was changing the language. There was something that we were practicing together, and she said, I'm going to change the language from today we're going to read for to today during the first read we're going to read for, because I want to embed kids in getting used to reading things more than once. And that's something that you framed for kids today before the quiz, which was fantastic. Okay, so as we go through our protocol today, we're going to focus on stamping the purpose of specific lesson parts, and we're going to do that by giving students purposeful annotating and thinking jobs. So, you're going to watch me as I model doing this, setting kids up for the first read by giving them a purposeful thinking and annotation job. While I'm doing this model, I want you to think, how do I set students up to be active readers? Okay? In today's reading, so we just start do now, pencils down, track me. In today's reading, Jack shares his feelings about his yellow dog. Does it help you to share your feelings when you feel big feelings? Why or why not? Think, turn and tell your partner, turn, and top. Bring it back in 3, 2, 1. There's a lot of feelings that we can experience as a person. I've heard us in class use different words for feelings, like uncomfortable feelings, like anger or sadness. Show me your angry face. Bring it back. Show me your sad face. But I want to push us today on a couple other emotion words for us to use as we think about sharing our emotions and how Jack shared his emotion. The first word I'm sharing with us is nervous. Say it.
Nervous.
Notice the nervous emoji. There's sweat dripping out his face. He feels kind of cool, but also kind of unsure. The next word is resentment. Say it.
Resentment.
Resentment is like an extra form of angry. It's almost close to hate. Notice how the resentment emoji is red, whereas the anger emoji is still yellow. Resentment means you can feel that anger all the way to your head and your toes. The next uncomfortable feeling word is disappointment. Say it.
Disappointment.
Notice the disappointment emoji. It's when things don't go our way. These are 3 new uncomfortable feeling words, but now let's look at some comfortable feeling words. We've used words already like excited. Show me your excited face. Now show me your proud face. But 3 new words I want us to add to our comfortable feelings vocabulary is intrigued. Say intrigued.
Intrigued.
Intrigued is when we're feeling curious about something and we want to learn more. Another word is delighted. Say delighted.
Delighted.
Notice the delighted face is nice and smiley. Delighted is another way to say joyful. It's like excited and happy put together. The last word today is content. Say it.
Content.
Content means you're feeling fine with how things are going. You're happy, but you're not overly happy. You're just feeling really good. I want us to take these feeling words into our reading today as we get ready to read, as we think about strong emotions Jack feels while he reads. Today, we're getting ready to read pages 68 to 78 of Love That Dog. Love That Dog is a book of poems, and when we read poetry, we think about what the poem is about and who the speaker is. We think about what the poem is
About.
and who the speaker
Is.
Today, as we read for our first read, you're going to notice 2 big events that cause Jack to feel strong emotions. While you're reading, you're going to jot twice. Once a note about a big emotion that Jack feels, and once an event that happens to Jack. Today, we're partner reading, which means you are reading with the person touching your shoulder. Your voice is on a whisper 1. You're reading with your pencil in your hand. Your eyes are on your text, and you're switching partners each page. Kate, what are you thinking about as we read today?
An event, an emotion.
An event, an emotion, an event, 2 events that cause big emotions. What are you going to annotate about today, Jenny?
The events that cause emotions.
1 event and 1 emotion.
Got it. Yeah.
And what voice level are we on while we read today, Miss Stokes?
1.
We're on voice level 1. You have 5 minutes to read these 4 pages. Get ready, go. And see. Okay, let's take a minute with your shoulder, with actually your partner next to you, across from you. How did I set up students to be active readers, and what was the power of making student thinking visible? Sure. You can also answer questions, but she also has questions.
It just gives it like really sticky purpose for what we're reading for. It gets them super ready for rereading.
I really struggle with how to set up students to be active readers since most of them cannot access our text and sometimes struggle with like even one-to-one correspondence
Oh.
reading. At times, like especially when it's like a long text or really big words that like they get lost in. So that's something that I have a really hard time with, other than just having them track with me or think about something. Like I find it's hard to have them like engaging.
For me to be for me, I do table groups instead of partners.
Yeah, I still can't do that.
Well, yeah, but I guess because Lorenzo's in here.
Lorenzo's in here, and even like, I do have some higher readers, but they can physically read the text, but they cannot also comprehend.
Yeah,
Mm.
Like
thinking
Alan Ben
about
said,
it.
like they can't do both things at once, really.
Then
So,
we're going to talk about TPQs today, and that might be what helps solve that. Great. Okay, making thinking visible helps us know if students are thinking while they're reading or not. And it supports them in becoming better active readers. This is something that we've been practicing with our weekly quizzes, and I think this is going to take that, what's happening weekly, to be more transferable on when they independently read articles in front of them. Annotation makes thinking visible. So here are a couple examples from a couple different classrooms, and I think most of them are middle school classrooms. And it slows readers down so that they do actually make meaning while they read. Annotation is often done when rereading to help us more deeply analyze a text. We do this as in the deeper meaning read, which is what I heard over here from 3rd grade team. But it also can be done during the first read to help the reader make sense of the text at a literal level. This is from a different school, but this is from 6th grade, but this is something that I've seen in your class as you've had kids practice putting jots together to make a bigger gist. And then annotations can also include monitoring comprehension and asking questions to yourself. When Mark was talking today about why we use like academic habits and CFS, I was sitting there going, because as readers, we do these things naturally, right? We monitor our comprehension, we ask ourselves questions, we make connections to background knowledge we already have. Annotation makes that visible and lets kids do that when they get confused or stuck. Now, here's the caveat. Annotations must not distract students from the text. If it does distract students from the text, then it's not necessarily worth doing. It's what Tim Shanahan, who, if you don't sign up for his emails, I might sign you all up for them because he's a delight. He only sends them out once a week. But he calls it unclose reading, where it's when we're annotating rather than reading, we're focused on annotating and not what's in front of us in the text. So to make this easier for us as teachers, we've created a framework, more or less sentence stems, that we can use to set kids up for annotation. Here's the upside down pyramid of a purposeful annotation job. So what you do at the top is name the genre and the genre thinking job. You set your purpose for the first read. You set your annotation job, and then you set your during reading expectations with a CFU at the end, which is what you saw me do.
I have a question.
Yes.
And that's kind of like with the quiz today.
Yep.
Sometimes naming the genre first can be a little confusing.
Mhm.
So I've always told kids like make sure you name the genre, like based on the title.
Mhm.
But when I read the title, I thought the story was nonfiction.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, no. I should have read, like you read first and then find the genre. So it's like sometimes it doesn't always
There will be several times throughout a weekly module that you will let kids explore the genre. Most of the time though, you've already gone over what the genre is, so you can just give the genre
Well,
thinking
not
job.
in that, I'm just talking about just like other things that are outside, like in terms of like quizzes and stuff like that. Just like,
Yeah, becoming genre detectives is,
I let them explore the genre.
Yeah.
Like, it's on the right. Just like Lorenzo.
yeah, I know, we do have them.
How do
We
you
do
know?
have
I was
a
like,
ton
how
of
do you
them.
know? They're like, it's over there.
My examples here, where I put the genre thinking job at the top, the first read purpose, the annotations, and the expectations on the side, along with the paper's page numbers that they'll read. But if you open up your packet, there's a couple examples on, it says page 3, but it's technically the second page. There's several examples there there's one example there on page 3, and then you can see several different examples on pages 4 and 4. Let's take 1 minute to read through a few of these. Okay, I'm gonna save that. Now here's the caveat. Read alouds, annotating during a read aloud is not necessarily something that's going to help like annotating during read alouds just doesn't really work. There's an adjusted framework that we'll look at in just a minute. If you're choosing read aloud, this is like something we're trying to norm as a region. We can also talk, like Jenny and I have talked a few times about read alouds. I'm open to talking about read alouds. But overall, read aloud should be used for above grade level texts or complex texts. So something that like Jenny and I talked about is text are complex for different reasons. If the language is a barrier for kids accessing the text because they really need to understand the complex structure, then read aloud makes sense. Or we're about to read circulatory story in 4th grade, and it's full of scientific vocabulary. That's going to hinder comprehension because what kids really need to comprehend is the knowledge of how the circulatory system works. So if language is a barrier, then read aloud is probably a strong option. It's largely contiguous. I just learned what this word means. It means that you read it all the way through. It models fluent reading. It sets kids up with a purpose or a thinking job, and then kids are following along with eyes on words. Stopping points really should just be 1 or 2 if you're reading a long chunk of text, but they should be purposeful, succinct, and not that frequent. Here's like the adjusted thinking job for a read aloud. Instead of giving an annotation job, you'll set a purpose with a thinking job, which is more or less what the purpose is.
Yeah.
So as you're reading, you're gonna look for 2 events that cause Jack strong emotions. Cool. Now, I am gonna ask you to pull up Friday's lesson. And this is where we're gonna do a quick little drill before we jump into prep and practice. Or Mondays.
No, it's, I
You
mean, I
said
have,
Thursday or
no,
Friday?
I have Fridays too.
Thursday and Friday, yeah.
Yeah.
Great, sorry. And if not, then you can do it for Thursdays too. But I want us to practice like doing one of these frameworks before we do the whole prep and practice protocol. Because I want us to do our prep and practice protocol with Thursday's lesson. Is that gonna make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna set the timer for about 3.5 minutes. And I want you to try using the annotation job framework to script your own directions and purpose for your gist read. So Sydney, can you, just because I feel like that was a really unclear direction, can I check for understanding using you? What are we doing right now?
So we're gonna take our lesson for
Friday.
and then just script in like what we're gonna set for the just
Annotation, perfect. Would it be helpful for me to have the upside down pyramid or my example slide up?
This fine.
Okay.
Well,
someone not going today? Mr. Wright.
There was a.
Were you text ready? He's looking for.
So, I have a question. For the most part, I need to read
Mm.
so is then having a job that I have, I thought I've talked about it in my set, but like have like a person that is taking care of, you know, housing person setting, like we're still kind of working on like building our chicks, so just having like giving them that to read independent, but I could do that for staff.
That's great.
Would that be a friendly to have them engage in something
Yeah.
instead of doing
Yeah.
during as in like annotating?
Yeah. Yeah. I think for you it makes the most sense to follow this pyramid.
And right now, I think that like my thinking job will continue to be artistically what.
Yeah, and it does depend on the text because like fourth grade, right?
It doesn't matter.
Where?
It doesn't really matter, whereas like
matter.
in
He's at
class
school.
with Mary singing at the Lincoln Memorial.
That one is good. She's in Europe and she goes to audition.
Yeah, that's fine. I have a question for you.
Yes.
So on this thing,
Mhm.
it says that whenever we read nonfiction, we pay attention to the topic and what the author is trying to teach us about the topic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we say that, but we say that in our own words, so is that fine? Like we think about
Oh, I
like,
copied the thinking job exactly from this for poetry. You're welcome to. But I
no,
just-
no, like, well,
and then-
like sometimes I'll usually say since we read it, like we think about our who, we know our who Marion, we're thinking about what important thing is happening to Marion and on pages 29 to 32. Is that fine? Is what I'm saying?
Or do we need to
we
be more
do-
specific to like?
It needs to be more specific because we want it to be transferable.
So-
Or so it actually needs to be less specific.
So saying the, like, the
Oh,
who
much
and
more
what happens to Marion is too specific?
Mm-hmm. So we want to keep the genre thinking job transferable.
So when we read nonfiction texts, the readers think about our who and what is the author trying to teach us
Yeah.
about our person or.
Yeah, it's think of it as a funnel, right? I mean, like the pyramid. Because when we name the genre thinking job, we want, it's when we read nonfiction, we think about who and what the author's teaching us. So we wouldn't say what Marion is doing because every time you read nonfiction.
You do that during the set purpose.
But you would do that during the set purpose. If
Yeah.
that's a purpose that you're having kids read for.
What is the author trying to teach us about Mary? Well, without saying Mary, make it transparent.
Well, I mean, like,
Who did what?
there's like,
Yeah,
no, I
that's-
mean,
I
like,
guess I'm
I'm
just-
reading this verbatim. Whenever we read poetry, we pay attention to who the speaker is, what the poem's about, and what the poem
Yeah.
sounds or looks like.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna get specific after we read through these directions. That's where I'm.
But that's what,
that's where you're
where
talking about
my
Marion,
confusion, I guess, is
right?
coming from. You want us to be, name this for the setting purpose, but then you also want us to be more specific about like what they're looking for.
So the set purpose is like your thinking job is to pay attention to events.
Okay.
Your annotation job is to jot to events.
But they're not annotated because you're doing a read out loud.
Well, I have been having mine like stop and jot, but like at specific points, so yes.
But if you're doing a read aloud for the annotation, I would actually pause on the annotation because what you could do is give a TDQ at the top.
Okay.
So the other day, so yesterday, you asked where, so the kids stopped and jotted because you asked, where is Marion going? Or something along those lines, right? So here's, today we're reading we're continuing to read When Marion Sang. When Marion Sang is nonfiction. When we read nonfiction, we pay attention to who and what the author's trying to teach us. Today, as we do our first read, you're going to pay attention to where Marion went. Today we're doing a read aloud, which means your finger is tracking.
Cool. That was my confusion, is both
Great.
parts. I thought it was, you were saying one over the other, and okay, sorry.
And so arguably, because this is what I did for lesson, and you're doing this lesson that I modeled, you don't have to use these these directions. If these directions do not align to the thinking that you want kids to do, then you should be restricting those.
So,
Yeah, I don't
Mhm.
the set the purpose is not the actual thinking job. I mean, it's not the job that I really want them to do. I want them to think about what important event they're marrying. So I need to name that as
While
well.
we're reading for our first read, yes.
Okay.
That's where I was
Great.
confused.
Glad we did
Yeah,
a
yeah.
drill before we did our whole P3, because I think that helped wrinkle things
It's
up.
like good readers think about who did what, and as you're reading, I also want you to think about
Yes,
what important event
Yeah,
happened
yeah,
to
yeah.
them.
exactly. Yes. Fantastic. Great.
I just need mine.
Awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad. The point of doing P3 is so that this is transferable and you can use it. So let's jump into P3. Let's put Fridays to the side. That one is done for you. You don't have to worry about it. And put Thursday on top. In our handout, if you want to follow along, you can turn to, I've printed the prep and practice protocol for you, and when it's time to use the framework, I'll direct you to split back if I think that was a helpful resource when I was sorting mine. Okay, let's start with our exit ticket in mind, because we always start with the end in mind. Take 2 minutes to look at your standard and to look at your exit ticket. By the end of these 2 minutes, you should be able to tell your shoulder partner the standard is reflected in this exit ticket by, and this chunk of pages is a good match for the standard because. I'm really gonna push you to answer that last question. This chunk of text is good for the standard because.
It's just fine.
Answering a question.
Oh, great! Because there are lots of ways to answer. I mean, I'm excited to see those chunks of pages. All right, I'm putting 2 minutes on the clock. I'm gonna move the clock over here so I don't have to keep getting up.
I think that a better,
I thought these didn't important because Mary was able to bring black and white people
that's
together.
exactly what I was thinking, cause that's like, it's asking about the illustration too, and I feel like that's a clear thing to see.
It just say use details in the answer to understand the thing. But the answer that they have on the thing is just like, it's not correctly.
That was like a stretch, more than.
I agree, so I
It's
feel
just
like
standing next to Roosevelt, it shows that he's not prejudiced. And I was like, that's not true. You got something to say, Mr. Berger?
I have a thought, but I don't wanna derail us, cause it's, yeah. can't
Bye,
talk
Mr.
to me.
Vernon, thanks so much.
I added illustration because,
Cool.
the word thing.
About a minute, we're gonna share.
And Lincoln owned slaves, so it's like it's a really a strange. And he did help the estates, but.
Also some problematic things.
No, like, I'm just, your exit ticket answer is it's just a long.
It was weird, they make some weird choices.
It was just like not based on what was actually stated in the text.
No, it's like
so-
President, they're standing next to President Roosevelt and it shows that
But
he's
you
not
can't really
prejudiced
see
and
the
racist.
Whoa.
That's why I was just like,
Yeah.
and that's just not true.
It just had, it also like there were no words in the text that said that, it was just like they were just supposed to make this weird jump.
Like what it could be.
That because he was there watching her saying that therefore.
Nobody was prejudiced.
Yeah.
No one was prejudiced.
Yeah, which like doesn't.
That
Great.
is upsetting.
Have you guys been listening to 1619 from the Daily?
No, that's been on my list though, so.
So,
I just
anyway.
got the podcast.
Yeah. Why don't we just share the last question? These pages are a good match for the standard because with your shoulder partner. So I'm actually gonna go this way.
They're asking like,
Yeah.
yeah, about this, it's not just
The
like she's
standard is
singing,
just about
it's
answering
like
questions,
questions,
and
and
it's
about
about
why she's singing.
Yeah.
This question was like about
And
why
like
it
how
was
important like history, like the importance of history.
And so it's just like, it goes beyond just.
Yeah, it's just like,
having
it
to show, like, a
goes-
deeper understanding about like, at
Their
the beginning,
policy,
she was
it just like goes beyond.
segregation, and now she's like,
Like-
bringing people together, so it's kind of like a literal text understanding, but also getting at a
Yeah.
bigger,
Like it's like getting them towards making.
less literal.
This book is so long.
It is, but then really.
Um, describing characters and specific details, and the excerpt is asking them to describe Jack's attitude.
What?
It's a butterfly.
Like a real butterfly?
Here,
It was in a I'm sorry.
happening here, you're fine. I get distracted very easily, not your fault at all. But yeah, so it aligns well because understanding Jack's attitude helps you understand what's happening, Jack.
Jack
Who is
also
the
has a
character?
lot of attitudes.
It's a lot of feelings.
Harvey Mitchell. I was like, what do you learn about Jack from this page? Like, he's really dramatic, and my mom says that I'm really dramatic, so I can understand. Priscilla?
It's amazing.
Harvey
Love.
Well, I thought you said Naomi.
I thought you said Armani, and I was like, all of these seem right.
I thought you said
Okay, we're gonna jump into the read for just enjoy, but we're gonna start with the end in mind. So this is actually a little bit of a switch from the norm. So let's just whip around your gist or literal takeaway that kids need to walk away from for this lesson. We'll start fourth grade.
Sure. That just the literal understanding of the gist?
Yep.
Jack writes a letter to Walter D. Myers inviting him to visit his class, and Jack is frustrated that getting a response will take so long.
Marion said that the look at me.
And she was, I think the page before is also important, saying that she was supposed to sing in another place, but they rejected her. Because she was black. But getting to why she was then invited to one program.
If you call her colored, huh?
Yeah, I
She
know.
is
Oh,
not.
because they
we don't
use that in the
word
book.
No more.
Oh,
So
they say in the
I
book.
had to like talk about that, like, we don't use that anymore.
That was
Like,
on
here,
purpose,
son,
not
and
you.
he's like,
What word?
Colored.
Colored.
And it's like, cause she's colored, and I was like, no, 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 no. We're not in the 1950s
We're not gonna
anymore.
do that.
Let's go ahead and shut that down.
She's black.
Okay, so that's where we're going with our literal understanding. Let's take a look at the launch and the before read. What is the purpose of your before read and how does it connect to your launch? That's what I want you to jot down. It'll take 2 minutes. And if it's not a good purpose, rewrite
This is
your
the
launch.
That's
right?
before
So
Yeah,
you-
I'm sorry, the launch is the before read.
oh, okay.
Yep. And if it's not a strong connection, rewrite it. But essentially like stamp the purpose of that before read. Wait, did you teach that?
No, I mean tomorrow.
That's why, that's because I
Thinking this
prepped,
today.
I prepped this lesson for the coaches PLC.
Oh,
I was like,
gotcha,
wait,
gotcha.
I did launch, I've seen the launch. That's because I prepped it.
I like
prepped
when quizzes on
Friday
Wednesday.
night.
So when flex days come, we just have lessons to do.
Yeah, I like it.
We do quizzes on Wednesday, so now when flex days come, we just do our lessons.
They're like doing the things that they're supposed to.
Yes, like both things.
Yikes. Poor Juan.
Poor Jeremy. And Tamani. You should see her though. She literally colors in it.
Also did one in pen, don't worry.
Oh, Arlen, I have to follow up with you, I'm so sorry, this is like a week later. I think Ms. Schmidt's gonna take her and do the same intervention that she's doing for Juan.
Okay.
What did Juan get in?
Sight words, literally like car.
But
and
she
pictures.
knows sight words.
She does know sight words. See, I might have her do, cause Schmidt's gonna try it with her and give me feedback, cause I might pair with Jocelyn.
Yeah.
Cause Jocelyn does something very similar, not like Arlen, I mean, it's like Arlen, but not at the same degree as Arlen.
So, cause like I have MJ's pop game, which is sight words, and she does those
She
really
does.
well.
I think that's the thing, she's gonna have sight words. Like,
Juan certainly has not.
or like, cause Jocelyn does this too, instead of watching becomes another iteration of watch, or like finding becomes another iteration of find.
And she's like reading
It's
this
very
whole thing, I'm like, I
interesting.
think you got that word right.
And she reads so fast.
And she reads fast, so I'm like, I have no idea.
Okay, so this is where I do want, nope, before we do that. No, yep, no, we're not gonna, we already practiced it, great. 2 minutes a pair, actually, I'm gonna do it 1 minute a pair for the sake of time. 1 minute a pair, doing your launch read You're not gonna give directions for the gist yet, you're just gonna launch your
Yep.
lesson.
Got it.
Yep, great, cool.
Wait, sorry, can you
Mm-hmm. You're 1 minute a pair, you're going to launch your lesson. You're not gonna jump into your directions for the gist yet. Cool.
Quick.
Got it? Cool. Rock, paper, scissors, see who goes first.
I'm gonna let you go first, cause I only ever wanna go first, so go for it.
And partner 1, go ahead and stand up.
Oh.
And action.
Today we'll read about
Jack,
the important time in Marion's life.
Practice. Nice practice.
What is an important,
What's something you
no, I'm not
worked
gonna.
on?
Today we're gonna read about an
Turn.
important thing that happened in Marion's life. But before that, I want you to think about something important that has happened in your life that you'll always remember. For example, something that's Hurricane Katrina. It's like in 6th grade when Hurricane Katrina hit. That's
So
something
we're
that I'll
thinking
always
to- I'm
remember.
not
When I say
going
go,
into
you're gonna turn and
the
talk
launch
to your
of the-
teacher.
What's your connect? So why is that this a good launch? So like what do you
So
say?
now, Baba,
Today?
so
Yeah.
now that we have those
Okay, so
events,
now,
No, no, I'm
that's
sorry.
what I'm asking.
now that we have those
Am I
events
staying
in
in
our
here?
lives that we'll always remember,
You're
I want us to
saying there,
think
but
about
then
the
what would,
event that
how does
is
that
important
tie
in
into what we're
Marion's
doing
life
today?
that
Yeah.
Marion and people will always
Yes,
remember.
how are you thinking?
Okay, we're thinking today about how has Jack improved, on his poetry.
Excellent. Great.
I mean, I feel like this is one of the few that actually like to work with high school.
Yeah, and most times
Most of the
I
time
just
I'm
skip
like,
'em.
nope. That doesn't work.
Oh, important event, or anything in your life that will.
Alright, and switch. Go.
So, before we start learning today, I wanna know about a momentous event that took place in your life. For me, it was the day I got into college. That's gonna be something that I remember like distinctly for my life. So you're gonna turn and talk with your partner about a momentous event in your life. Miss Stubbs, what are you turning and talking to your partner about?
Moments you see things that happen, look at in your life.
Great, turn to find a partner. Discuss.
My dog.
Yikes.